Alright, well, it's Monday and a lot has happened, so that's why I wanted to cover it. I'm talking quietly because I got my son in the back sleeping, and if he wakes up, I won't be able to complete this video. But Anthony Scaramucci, after a week of being the press secretary for the White House, has been removed, and General Kelly is now the chief of staff after Reince Priebus was removed as well. So a lot of shakeups going on in the White House. Pretty interesting stuff, but it sounds like Scaramucci let his mouth go as press secretary. He was using foul language and he got caught for it, so Trump replaced him. But what I really wanted to talk about was the markets. Interesting day where the Dow hit a new record, just shy of 22,000. In past videos I said that the Dow could probably reach 23, 24,000. And I think it could do that. I'm seeing a lot of a repeat of 2008. I keep telling people that. Back then I was a commodities specialist, and I was watching the currency trading and the commodities, and the dollar was pretty much dropping at that time, and everybody was like, oh, the dollar has broken through 92 and it's going to break through this and that, and it was reaching parity with the loonie and all these other currency pairs. The dollar was becoming 1-in-1 exchange rate with those, meaning it's lost so much value that those lower value currencies were actually pretty much becoming parity or fair exchange for that. $1 would equal one of those lower value currencies. And everybody's worried, saying hyperinflation's coming in, and we're going to see super hyperinflation. And we had gold and silver take off for a little bit towards the end of the year. We're not really seeing gold and silver move right now, but they probably will start moving towards the end of the year, depending upon how this all ends. But the way it ended was, if you see the movie The Big Short, that's about the commercial mortgage-backed securities and the residential mortgage-backed securities, and how investors finally started asking themselves, what are these things? They're being bundled as high-yield bonds. And when they found out that they're not really high-yield bonds, that they're actually risky mortgages bundled into a derivative, a lot of the investors started pulling their money, which started the housing crash, which led to the financial crisis, because banks were involved in the commercial mortgage-backed securities, and their balance sheets started to look really bad because they were losing so much money they couldn't afford to service their interbank loans, where they borrow from each other. And I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen this time around, because the investors that are purchasing the commercial backed and mortgage-backed security, residential mortgage-backed securities, is actually the Federal Reserve now. And the Fed is talking about how they're going to shrink their balance sheet. And if that's the case, are we going to get a Big Short type scenario again, where like last time it was investors selling en masse, but now it's going to be the Federal Reserve selling those assets en masse, so we're going to have another real estate crisis? I don't know, because the housing market's doing the exact same thing too. It's been climbing, and then we have these commercial mortgage and residential mortgage-backed securities on the market out there. So it's a tough call. Again, we also have interest rates at a low, and they started raising them again, just like the Fed did before. When they raised the interest rates, you had the dollar start to correct, and the market started to correct, and everything started to crash again. So I'm not sure if it's going to be exactly the same this time around. It might be very similar. The other issue is, back then, the US dollar was still a world reserve currency and a flight to safety. I'm not sure that people consider it a flight to safety anymore, and I'm not sure if they even still consider it the world reserve currency. What they might do is flee to yuan, and if they do that, we could actually see hyperinflation, because that means they would dump US dollars in exchange for the new flight to safety currency, which would make the demand for the flight to safety currency, which would maybe be Chinese yuan, RMB, that would make that go up in value, and the US dollar would drop. However, here's another thing. The RMB, the Chinese RMB yuan, is pegged to the US dollar. So even if the yuan becomes the new world reserve currency, and if they peg their currency to the US dollar, they would have to drop that peg in order for the US dollar to drop like a rock. So I have to go through and think about all these things and try to figure out what's going to happen before I go in and say, you know what, I'm going to go short the market, because I don't know. The market might actually still go up. And like I said, it could go to 25,000 even now at this point. It could be a little bit different. Also, we don't have Barack Obama in anymore, who was against America, selling us down the road. We have Donald Trump, who's trying to rebuild the economy. So all these factors are similar, but they're different. And like I did in my other video, I talked about how Mark Twain said that history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it rhymes. So we may get the same result, but it may not be in the same time frame. One more thing to back up the Chinese yuan being the new reserve currency. The IMF talked about relocating their headquarters, which they have one in Washington. They're talking about relocating it to Beijing in China. And that's a pretty significant move. It tells us that they are seeing China as the new world superpower, if that's what they're trying to do. So we'll have to see what happens. I'm going to watch things, but everything looks eerily similar to 2008. And we got into a liquidity crisis. So what happened is the dollar, let me do it this way, the dollar fell and everything priced in dollars was rising. We're seeing that right now, seeing the stock market rising, we're seeing commodities rising. And then we had the liquidity crisis where banks couldn't afford to pay back their loans, and so people started to demand the dollar again. They would flee the bank assets and demand the dollar, and the dollar started to go up again. And when the dollar was going up, all the other assets like commodities and the stock market crashed like 777 points in one day. The commodities were tumbling, and the historical safe haven assets of gold and silver were crushed. And we could be seeing that again. The only thing is trying to figure out what's going to happen with gold and silver, because you got a record short position on silver by JP Morgan, and probably other players are shorting gold as well. At some point, if the dollar keeps dropping the way it is, JP Morgan will be losing a tremendous amount of money on silver. So they may unwind those. So we could see silver and gold take off again, just like in 2008. So we were seeing these historic rallies in the precious metal markets. Gold like immediately jumped up to like $1,900 an ounce, almost in parity again with platinum. Platinum is supposed to be the rarer metal. Platinum is also a precious metal, but it's a rarer one, and gold was about parity with it. Since then, gold has crashed down to about $1,200 an ounce. I haven't looked at the price of platinum. And palladium actually started all the rallying initially, and we're kind of seeing that again today. So yeah, eerily similar. A lot of things are the same, but it's tough to call. Is it going to happen the same way? I mean, honestly, Donald Trump is in there, but you can see by all the firing of people and reappointing new people that there's a lot of turmoil, because draining the swamp is not easy. I mean, a lot of supporters of Donald Trump are trying to figure out, when is he going to drain the swamp? Like, it's so easy to just pull people out and throw them out and get in new people. It doesn't work that way, especially when you got people who are making so much money off of the federal government, including our congressmen, the House and Senate. You're seeing with John McCain overthrowing the Obamacare repeal. Here he's in the hospital, and he's got a brain tumor, and that stubborn communist coot pulls himself out of his hospital bed, comes into the Senate chambers just to vote against Donald Trump at the midnight hour. Almost literally, it was like 1 a.m. when my time when they decided it, on the West Coast here, Pacific Standard Time. So draining the swamp is not easy. They really get rooted in there. And if you've ever had to clean a pond or ever had to clean a lake or a swamp, you'll see it's not easy. It's very tough work. I mean, trying to stand up is hard. Your feet get stuck in the muck. Sometimes you slip. You try to lift out the weeds and stuff that are in the water. It's a difficult task. Yeah, it's going to be a hard call, but so far things are going the same way. And so basically, the reason I brought up the fact that it's hard to drain the swamp is that President Trump is talking about tax cuts. Tax cuts would really help our economy take off, but because of these deep state, deep entrenched, money-sucking grubbers that are part of they're leeches on our economy and our government, they may not allow that tax cut to happen. If Trump can get it through, he's reelected for sure. But I just don't see it happening. They're going to prevent that from going on. So don't bet on tax cuts. He's going to be stonewalled by the Republican Party. I mean, you got too many rhino Republicans there as it is, and the Democrats for sure, as a group, as a communist group, as a bloc, will not support Donald Trump. So, and America, they don't care that America's going to fall apart. Like I said, all of them, you see what happened in Obamacare. They don't care about your health care plan. They've got separate health care. The best way to get Obamacare repealed or improved is to put Congress on the same plans that everyone else has to subscribe to. And if they do that, then there's an incentive for them to improve the healthcare system. But until then, they've got their Cadillac plans. They could care less about the average people. And Obamacare is focused on insurance companies and not healthcare itself. It's focused on improving things for the insurance business, since the plan was written by insurance companies for the Obama administration. So if you don't like the insurance companies charging you premiums, blame President Obama, because he was the one who had that plan formulated with them. So his name is all over it. It's going to fail. And it wasn't for all insurance companies. Let me caveat that. There was like a specific insurance company, I believe it was Kaiser, that wrote the Obamacare plan to kind of thin the herd, thin the competition. If they make it a guaranteed loss for all their competition except themselves, you pretty much kill everybody else. It's like a mafia move. You take out all the heads of each family, and the families crumble. So then there's only your family left standing. I like that that's from The Godfather. That's what Michael Corleone does. He takes out all the rival families. And we see Kaiser is thriving. That's their motto, their slogan. So Obamacare wouldn't be repealed, and really we shouldn't have a replacement for it, because that would be too fast, and it would probably be something very similar, just under a different name. And we should really spend more time on the healthcare situation, making the best choices for our people. Tax cuts are not going to happen. So this is what Donald Trump faces. This is what we all face as Americans. So, but the most important thing is the economy. If the economy craps out, they're going to do another bailout. They're going to do another quantitative easing. How they're going to do that, I don't know. Mark Zuckerberg this is another topic I wanted to talk about. Mark Zuckerberg brings up the universal basic income. That could be a way of stimulating the economy by putting money in people's hands. So that could be their next plan. I don't know, though, because Mark Zuckerberg doesn't necessarily represent the Federal Reserve or the government. But the other topic I wanted to talk about was artificial intelligence. Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook developed an algorithm where there were two artificial intelligence entities that they created. It's like Bob and Alice or something. I don't remember the names, but it's something like that. Bob and Alice are artificial. Let's just say for this case, it's Bob and Alice. They're artificial intelligence. They're not real human beings. And they created this algorithm so that they would communicate with each other, just to see how the artificial intelligence would interact. Well, the artificial intelligence actually became more intelligent than the human intelligence. We've already seen this with IBM's Watson. where he beat a chess champion and he played on Jeopardy and won. So I don't know why I say he, because they gave it a male's voice, but it's a robot, so there's no real gender identity. But these two entities were communicating. They developed their own language that the programmers couldn't understand. So then the programmers could not control them at that point. So they had to shut down the program. Now, Elon Musk, there's a time when I didn't like Elon Musk, but the more I pay attention to him, he's actually a very common sense guy, becoming one of my favorite billionaires also, even though he's kind of against some of the things Trump does, and I like Trump too. He's more realistic about it. He's saying that we better be careful about artificial intelligence. Those movies that, like the Terminator and the Net and all these things where technology tends to get out of control and is abused by evil people, or it becomes too smart and becomes evil itself. Those can come true if we're not careful. And Mark Zuckerberg is a millennial who became a billionaire out of like nowhere. He really hasn't had a chance to live life on common person's terms, to know what it's like to struggle. So he doesn't care. And my son's awake. Yikes, I better end this quick. But anyway, he doesn't care, and he doesn't understand the dangers with what he's doing. He just wants to be the first person to be I'm the AI guy, and so he'll create major problems for the rest of the world. So Elon Musk is warning us that we need to slow down with the AI, get a handle on it, understand it better before we progress with it, because like the Democrats like to say, progress is moving forward. Forward could be to the grave. So you have to really be careful where forward is. Don't just be like, I want to move forward. Forward is not always a good place to be. You have to be careful what's in front of you. If forward is a bar and it's right in front of your face, you're going to hit the bar on your head, you're going to get a bump on your head. Forward could be a pot of gold, but it isn't always a pot of gold. So that forward thing that they like to use as their campaign slogans and their globalist thinking and their democratic progressive thinking, we need to rethink that. We need to look at that and really analyze it, use some scruples, decide, is that really a good thing that I want to support? Because it sounds good. Together we move forward. It sounds so positive. They're masters at spinning it. Together we move forward. We're always moving forward. Forward thinking. Obama with forward, all this, So we need to rethink that stuff. All right? And forward could take us to an economic disaster. Forward can take us to a time where robots actually are more intelligent than we, and they take over the world, and we become the servants of robots. So take the time, develop our own human intelligence before we develop the artificial intelligence. And with that, I'm going to cut it. 18 minutes, that's a long video enough as it is. I just wanted to do a quick commentary and trying to get cut down more and more. So you guys have a good week. If I have any more interesting things I'll post it during the week. But for the most part, I've said what I need to say from yesterday and today, and I will see you Sunday. So have a good